Hey everybody, how are you doing today? Happy Tuesday. Took me a second, sorry. So we're going back-to-back pastas, which wasn't the original plan, but I moved Lizzie's pasta up to yesterday because it was her birthday. So I wanted to make her on her pasta on her birthday. So to kind of keep the schedule rolling, we just stuck with another pasta today. So today we are making pasta with meat sauce. So this is pretty simple, not a ton of ingredients, costs very little, and could feed a good amount of people. I would say anywhere between 4 to 8, depending on how much you like to eat, and if you want to maybe do a salad with it or some garlic bread. So got rigatoni, but you could use any noodle for it. I have ground beef because that's what I found. A little bit of chili flake, which is optional. Olive oil, tomato paste, crushed tomatoes, an onion, garlic, and a little bit of red wine. And at the store, when I went to the store last week, I didn't have a lot of ground beef, so I didn't have quite enough ground beef for the recipe, so I'm going to add a little bacon to bulk the whole situation up. So this is the same trick we did with the bacon last week. If you just put it in your freezer for about 20 minutes, it's easier to cook. First thing we're going to do is drop our pasta. Now this sauce typically takes anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour to make. I made one earlier today so we don't have to wait. So obviously you would typically drop the pasta when you have about 10 minutes left of your sauce, because the pasta takes about 8 minutes to cook, so right in that time. So rigatoni is going to go in. I'm going to turn my pan up to medium high. We're going to season our beef with a little bit of kosher salt and cracked black pepper, and then when we put it in the pan, we'll season the other side also. We're just going to let that really start to brown. Pan is hot, so we're going to add our olive oil, about 2 ounces. You could use any oil, and again, I'm using ground beef here. You could use ground pork, ground veal, ground chicken, ground turkey. If you're a vegetarian, you could use diced eggplant or mushrooms and build it that way too. So we're doing it with beef because beef is what I had. So let me give this a flip. Salt, cracked black pepper, and we're going to get this in the pan and let it start browning. So that goes in. As you can see, I saved a little spot there. That's going to be for the bacon. And we could just, because our bacon is like quick frozen almost, it's easier to cut because it just stacks and breaks apart easier. And you could put the bacon in there hours in advance in the freezer if you want to make this part of the procedure a little bit easier. Nice thing, the bonus with the bacon is it's going to render out a good amount of fat, which is then going to work its way into our sauce and be delicious. What do we got for questions, Liv? We got anything?
We have Lily saying it's her daughter's birthday and asking if you could give her a shout out.
Happy birthday, Lily's daughter. Hope you're having a wonderful birthday, one day after my wife Lizzie's, a fellow Aries. We like Aries in these parts, so have a great day today.
Mary Jane is asking, what would you do if you were using turkey in this to make it have more flavor?
Ground turkey, it's still going to have tons of flavor. You could go with it. Obviously, turkey is a little bit leaner than the beef or pork or some of those other meats. So maybe add a little bit more olive oil into the situation for that. What else, Liv?
Let's see. A lot of people checking in.
All right, we like that. We like a good check-in. I put the recipe up for the cake today. I think a lot of people were excited about that cake I made Liz yesterday because it was a success, so we put it up. Give this a quick wipe. Remember, you guys, bacon, when you're cooking with bacon, bacon's already, we mentioned this the other day, it's already cooked. It's been cured and smoked. What we're doing now is we're crisping it. So the level of crispiness that you want it is obviously your choice. Some people like it flabby, some people like it crispy, but you're not cooking it because it's not cooked. It's already been cured and smoked, which equals cooked.
Mildred is asking why you have to add oil to the pan when cooking ground beef. Doesn't it have enough fat?
When cooking what?
when cooking ground beef?
Yeah, you need you need the oil's going to work its way into the sauce, which we need for flavor of the sauce. But also, if you just put it in a dry pan, it's going to burn and not caramelize. So you get the pan hot, and then once the pan gets hot, you add your fat, and then once the fat gets hot, you add your meat, and it actually builds like a little pocket in there, so the meat doesn't stick. And so you get that nice caramelization and browning on your meat instead of it like blackening, because we don't want to blacken it.
Todd is asking, why do you prefer bacon over pancetta?
Because bacon's what I had. If I had pancetta and not bacon, I would have used pancetta. Obviously bacon is smoked. Pancetta is just cured. Pancetta is Italian bacon for those of you out there that may have not worked with it before. Pancetta is the same cut as American bacon. It's the belly of the hog, and it's just cured for a long period of time. They cook it just with curing. American bacon, after it is cured, we smoke it to give it a smoky flavor. But exact same cut of meat, just a slightly different preparation.
Anna's asking, she has an issue getting the onion smell out of her cutting board. How do you fix that?
I wash my cutting board with a little bit of soapy water, and then dry it real good, and then rub it with oil, a neutral oil when I'm done. You could also, when you're done cutting on the cutting board, you can rub it with lemons and then a little bit of salt. That'll pull it out. But remember, the great thing about wood cutting boards, as opposed to like plastic or other surfaces, is wood is a natural. It naturally kills bacteria and odors, so it will take care of a lot of it on its own. But you should still scrub it and go through that whole process too. Just make sure you oil it at least weekly, or else your wood cutting board will crack and it'll get dry and crack. So we got one onion.
Stacy's asking this, and I have the same question, is what are your tricks so that you don't cry while cutting an onion? I'm tearing up already over here.
You are not. She is not crying at all.
Okay, but I do usually cry when I
Well, a
cut
sharp
onions.
knife, the most important thing is a sharp knife, because if your knife is dull, it's kind of bruising and beating up the onion as it's going through it, which is releasing moisture, which is making you cry. Another trick is you could put, if the onions aren't the fresher the onions are, the better. If the onions aren't super fresh, you could put them in your refrigerator for a little bit, and it'll help. But the most important part is a sharp chef knife, or a sharp knife. What else we got, Liv?
We have a fan asking, would she be able to use other types of oil in this dish?
Absolutely. In a perfect world, what I'm doing with these recipes is if you guys look at the substitution sheets, which we put up, it kind of tells you what you could sub for everything. I'm giving you what I'm using, and it's based on two things: what I was able to find and my perfect scenario. My perfect scenario for this is olive oil. If you don't have olive oil, you could use grapeseed oil, you could use canola oil, you could use avocado oil, you could use pretty much any oil you want. I wouldn't use sesame oil, but any other oil I think would really work nice. So it's just a matter of finding an oil that works for you. You can see that bacon's rendering out. Our beef is browning, so we're getting to be in a really good spot here. When the beef gets nice and brown, I'm going to flip it, brown the other side, let the bacon continue to crisp, and then mash it all up and put in the onions. What else, Liz?
Kyle's asking, is there any difference in taste if you're grating your onion?
No, there's no difference in taste if you're grating your onion, but when you grate the onion, which is what my mom typically always did, is a lot of water and moisture comes out of the onion too. So it makes a wetter preparation. That liquid's going to evaporate. It's still going to taste the same. Everything's going to be fine, but it just gets a little bit, as you grate it, a lot of moisture pops out of it.
We have Catherine asking, is there a substitute for onions if she doesn't like onions?
No. I mean, you could use any kind of onion that you want, but there's no real sub for onion. I would add garlic. What I have found, and I've been eating sauces like this since I've been a child, because my mother is Sicilian and Greek. I've been making them my entire adult life. I have tons of friends that say they don't like onions, They have the sauce. They love the sauce. They never say a word about onions. So, you know, I think like if you don't, for example, like onions on say a hamburger, like a raw onion, if you're like the Scotty Conant version of onion hate, chances are you won't even know they're in a tomato sauce. Now, if you have an allergy to onions, that's a completely different situation and you eliminate them. But chances are if you're allergic to onions, you're also going to be allergic to garlic. Could you see in there, Liv? See how see the color we got on that ground meat, guys? That's really what we're looking for when we're browning meat in a meat sauce. That caramelization is what gives you really that deep flavor that you're looking for in a meat sauce. If you skip this step, you're really skipping a chance to maximize flavor.
Kelly said she usually separates the meat while she's cooking. Should she allow the meat to brown first?
Yeah, I'm going to show you. I let it brown, and once it's brown, I'm going to chop it up, and then we'll let it go. It's just, you could do it either way. I find it's easier to do this way. Norman, down. Norman, go see Mama. Go see Mama, Norm. It's just easier to work with and easier to get good caramelization on this way, in my opinion.
Jackie's asking, would there be a huge difference in taste if you used maple or brown sugar bacon or another flavored bacon?
No, use any kind of bacon you have. Obviously, if you use a maple bacon, it's going to bring some sweetness to the situation, which isn't a terrible thing. Some people like a sweeter style tomato sauce. I tend to like a tomato sauce that's a little bit more on the acidic side. But if you like a sweeter tomato sauce, it's okay to put sweeter things in there. I've even seen older Italian recipes that put carrots in their tomato sauce to bring out the sweetness. A classic bolognese also usually has carrots in it. Okay, so a trick that I usually do that I can't find right now is I use a potato masher to cut up the meat, but I'm just going to do this with my spoon, and we're just going to break it up into little chunks, work it in with this bacon that's almost getting to that crispy part that we like. The rest of that meat will start to brown, and then we could add, you can see the bacon's brown in there, we could add our vegetables. We want to make sure that we get good color on the meat before we add the veg, because the onions and the garlic have a lot of moisture, water in them. So if we add, as soon as we add those, that meat will stop caramelizing a little bit because the onions are going to release their water.
We have a fan asking, could she use frozen onions?
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't, but I would just put them in at the exact same time that I'm going to put the onions in now. Remember, a frozen onion is going to absorb water, so it's going to release a lot of water when you put it in. So we're going to put in our onions.
Tina's asking if she used ground chicken, would she brown the meat the same as you're browning the ground beef?
No matter what ground meat you use, the method, the technique is always the same. And again, guys, that's what I'm trying to teach you with these classes. Substitutions are okay. Substitutions are recommended. Substitutions are what make you a good cook. The technique doesn't change. Ground meat is ground meat is ground meat. The process stays exactly the same. All right, so watch that go real quick, Liz. And I'm gonna grab, I have a little bit, this is actually a fun thing. In my garden, I like to garden in the summer, and then any herbs that I have left over, I hang and I dry. So here's some, I didn't have oregano, but here's some dried thyme that I have. And you just take it, you hang it by a string upside down in a place and just let it naturally dry. You can put it between your hands and just rub it, and now you have beautiful, fresh, like dried thyme, but that came right from your garden. So if you are a gardener, and I know there's a lot of you out there, make sure at the end of the season when the herbs are done and you can't use them anymore, hang them, dry them, and then you could get the benefit of them all year. All right, so look at that. That's in. Now we're going to take our tomato paste. And we're going to mix that in, and we're going to let that tomato paste get almost like a rusty color because it needs to cook out. That's what brings out its natural sweetness. So as we mix it in with the meat and the bacon and the onion, we want it to get a little bit rusty in color.
Tony said he normally drains the meat before adding veggies. Does that matter?
Yeah, I would never do that because the most flavorful part of the meat is the fat that is in it. When you drain the meat, you drain the flavor. So I would work that into your sauce. Even if you wanted to skim the sauce later, you still want that tomato or that fat in your sauce because that's where the flavor is. A little bit of red wine. A lot of questions, like people are like, well, what you say red wine that you would drink? What does that even mean? You know, I would use one that isn't oaky. I would use one that isn't too sweet. We want a good amount of acidity to kind of cut through the sauce a little bit. So I would just use a nice full-bodied red. I mean, if you try to stick with the meal, maybe a Italian red would be nice. And then we're going to put in our crushed tomatoes, 1 can.
Karen is asking if it's better to dry herbs or to freeze them.
It just depends. I don't know. That's a tough question. I like both ways. I mean, herbs that I like to dry: oregano, marjoram, thyme, rosemary. When you're pouring tomato into a sauce or into a pot, guys, pour it over your spoon and it doesn't splash on everybody or yourself. So it just depends on the kind. Soft herbs like parsley and basil and cilantro and tarragon, I would freeze those. So I'm going to put, this is an optional ingredient, a little bit of chili flake in mine because I like things spicy. You don't have to. I'm going to crank up a little bit of cracked black pepper. I'm going to drop this down to a simmer, and then this is going to cook just a splash of water. This is going to cook for anywhere, and some of this depends on the tomatoes, you know, like I used to always say use San Marzano tomatoes because they're really sweet, and a San Marzano tomato doesn't have to cook that long. So if you're using a San Marzano, sometimes you could have the sauce done in 30 minutes. A lot of other tomato products that you use are going to take closer to an hour. So lid goes on this, 45 minutes to an hour. Here's the one that I did this afternoon. Just gotta warm up a little bit.
Hetty's asking, can she put sugar in it if she has acidic issues?
Oh gosh. Oh, you can. If you must, you can. But my Sicilian grandmother just rolled over in her grave twice. But if that's how you like it, I say do it. Put it in if that's how you like it. Yeah, Italians don't, it's like, I didn't grow up that way. It's like when I go to a pizza place and they put sugar in their tomato sauce for their pizza. Oh my gosh, I want to cry. I just want to cry inside. Okay, so, boom. So this one has been cooking for an hour. So Liv, look at, I want people, so that's starting. Mm-hmm. This is how it looks when it's done. So you can see about a third of our liquid has reduced out of there. Now we're going to take our pasta right from the boiling water, add it in.
Helena's asking if she takes ground beef out of the freezer and defrosts it, can she put it back in the freezer?
No, I try to only freeze once. But you could make it into a sauce and then freeze it as a sauce. But you don't want to keep pulling things out of the freezer, then putting them back in the freezer, and so forth and so on.
If you were to freeze this sauce, how long would it last?
In the freezer, this will last 6 months.
There you go.
You guys don't tell anybody, but I overcooked my pasta a touch. Just a touch. It's going to be okay, but I'm going to...
Audra's asking if tomato paste in a tube and canned tomato paste taste the same.
Tastes exactly the same. The tomato paste in the tube, the benefit of it is it's just easier to work with, easier to clean with than if you use half the tube, you could refrigerate it. We're then going to put in about 4 ounces or so of pasta water. I'm going to mix our noodles in with sauce.
We have a couple of people asking if they could use, they don't have wine.
Absolutely. Stock is another substitution that we put on our substitution list. We're going to have to remember to put the substitution list up every day with the recipe.
It was up on last night's recipe.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yes, sir.
You guys got to read your substitution list. So when I say liquid, you could use wine, beer, stock. All those things work. So we're going to put a little bit of flat leaf parsley in here. The other fresh basil would work here too.
Judy's asking, what's the difference between, a meat sauce and a ragu?
Usually a ragu is has like chunks of meat, and meat sauce is ground meat. But I mean, they're similar. Sometimes a ragu is just straight meat. Sometimes they call it a sugo. Just depends. I didn't put this in the recipe, but my grandmother always did this, so I'm going to do it. Little grandma trick, little pat of butter at the end. I'm going to give this a stir, and then I'm going to turn the heat off as soon as this butter starts to melt, and I'm going to grate in my Parmesan. And the reason I said I overcooked the pasta a bit, it's actually cooked good coming out of the water, but I like to cook it about a minute or two less than I need to, so I could finish cooking it in the sauce. That way it absorbs some of the sauce as it finishes cooking, which is really nice. Get our parm.
A lot of people are asking, what do you do when you have to make 2 of the dish, like tonight? Like 2 pasta sauces. Where does the food go?
We eat it for 2 days, and then I send some to my friend's house.
Yes, that was the answer.
So yeah, what we do is we have a little system going with our group of friends. It's like I cook the savory, different people do sweets, different people are in charge of beverage, wine, and we just leave stuff on each other's at the front door. Like Liz has a little step ladder set up by our front door. She puts something there, someone takes something off and adds something, and that's how we've been doing it. So everybody's kind of responsible for different stuff. So the cheese is melted, the heat is off, parsley's in. Now we put in our Parmesan, and you had to do this with hard cheeses once the heat is off. If this was still simmering, the cheese would get all stringy and it would be a mess. Same like how we did the cacio e pepe or the Lizzie pasta last night. So now we mix that cheese in. So we have the sauce finished with the butter, a little bit of parsley, a little bit of parm. That is a work of art right there.
Naomi's asking if this would be okay if she removed the dairy items in it.
100%. Yeah, 100%. You guys, all these recipes, look, the thing that I really want, if you learn nothing else from doing these classes, I want you to learn that substitutions are okay. Learn the technique when you're cooking a dish, and you could make millions of dishes. Eliminate things that don't fit your fancy or that you I have inflammation issues because I have autoimmune stuff. I have lupus and I have RA. So I know that dairy and sugar are my 2 biggest triggers. Sometimes I'll put a little bit of dairy in because I want it, or because I'm teaching you guys how I think it should be made perfect. But if I was making this just for me and not showing someone how to make it, I would have probably eliminated the butter at the end. Hard cheeses don't affect me that much, so I probably still would have went with the parm. But you really should just make food that fits you, and then you're good. I mean, it's all about these kind of simple techniques, and then you make just a food that really fits your diet or what you enjoy. It's like, if you hate parsley, don't put in parsley. If you love basil, put in basil. If you can't eat dairy, eliminate the butter. there's no right or wrong. It's just what you like best. You know, sometimes chefs, even myself at some point, you know, there is like traditional ways. So like if, whoops, oh, I just fired myself. Like if I was saying I'm making bolognese, this is not bolognese. So if someone said they were making bolognese and they did this, I said you didn't make bolognese. So there is traditional ways that you could do things, and those should be traditional. But if you're just making meat sauce or a dish for yourself and you're not being judged on if it's a classic or made exactly like a classic is, you could riff and you could have some fun. A little more cheese. All right, let's see how we did. Any other questions, Liv?
John is asking, what does Michael think about alternative pastas like whole wheat, brown rice, and vegetable pastas?
No problem. You do you. If you want to use a zoodle, I hate that term though, zoodle. Thin zucchini slices, that works. You know, a lot of people some people are celiac, so they're trying not to eat wheat. Some people think gluten's bad for you. I'm not one of those people. You know, I think wheat that's not milled properly and wheat that's been bleached and enriched and bromated, bad for you. Properly processed wheat, not bad for you. And if you're just having some gluten intolerance issues, it's probably because the wheat that you're eating hasn't been processed right. Celiac's a different story. I have a dear friend that's celiac. It's awful. It sucks, and I hate that. So if you need to use substitutions for that reason, have at it.
Deborah is asking, she also has RA, and she missed your videos on eliminating foods that trigger. Can she find those anywhere?
Yeah, they're all in my cookbook, Fix It With Food. We also did a 10-day reboot on Instagram. You could go back and look at that. I think it's tagged Fix It With Food. There's a little, Liv made it all easy to find. But yeah, that's it. Boy, Liv, this is good.
Can't wait.
I'm pretty happy about this. So you guys, I'll see you tomorrow at 5 o'clock Eastern. We're actually going to make a fun little roasted chicken with like a sesame peanut sauce. It's going to be delightful over some vegetables and a little white bean puree. Fun dish. But if you cook along with us, which I hope you're doing, you could post the pictures at #Simon with the Y dinners. Obviously, everything is on the Food Network Kitchen Facebook page where you're watching this right now, and we'll put recipes up and be back tomorrow there at 5. We then show it on my Instagram page, which is Chef Simon with the Y, along with my Facebook page and my Twitter page. And take pictures of the food, hashtag them, tag food at Food Network, tag me so we could see them, repost them, have a conversation about them. It's fun. You guys, come on. We're going to get through this one day at a time, one dish at a time. I will see you tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And Norman, you weren't too bad today, but say bye to everybody. Say bye,
Bye.
hanging out at my feet.